Today we're going to be learning about solving equations using the distributive property. In your table of contents, add the title of today's lesson, Solving Equations Using the Distributive Property. Press pause, and when you're ready to set up your notes, press play. At the top of the next clean sheet of notebook paper in your spiral notebook, write the title of the lesson, Solving Equations Using the Distributive Property, and then write the essential question. How can I apply my knowledge of the distributive property to solve multi-step equations? Hit pause, and when you are ready to start with the notes, press play. First, what is the distributive property? You don't need to copy this because this is already in our notes from our unit on expressions, but let's just review. The distributive property is when you have a number written outside a set of parentheses, and you are going to take that number and you are going to distribute it. You are going to multiply the number outside of the parentheses times each of the terms inside the parentheses. So 3 times x gives you 3x, and 3 times 2 gives you 6. Okay, again, this is a review from our last unit, and you already have this in your notes. You don't need to copy this down. So now we're going to look at how can we apply the distributive property to equations. Go ahead and hit pause and copy this into your notes. Also copy the example. When you're ready to work the example, press play. All right, our steps for solving equations using the distributive property. Notice on the left side of this equation, we see a scenario where we have parentheses and a number outside the parentheses. That tells me that I'm going to have to distribute. So step 1, we are going to use the distributive property to multiply the term outside the parentheses times each term inside the parentheses. So I'm going to multiply 3 times 3x, that is 9x, and then 3 times 6, and that is 18. So just like we did in our last unit with distributing, we are now applying that distributive property to solving equations. You need to work this example with me in your notebook as I'm doing it on the board. Okay, from here, all we have now is a two-step equation. Again, I want to solve for x. I want to get x by itself, so I see that I'm going to have to get rid of the 9 and the 18. So step 1, we're following the process of solving the two-step equation. We first want to undo the addition or subtraction. So since I see minus 18, I'm going to do the opposite of that, and I'm going to do plus 18. And whatever I do on one side, I have to do to the other side. And here I'm using the addition property of equality. So I'm going to bring down 9x. Minus 18 plus 18 is 0, so I can cancel those out. There we go. And then 18 plus 18 is 36. Now I just have a one-step equation, and I'm going to undo the multiplication or division. So I see 9x equals 36. Since that's multiplication, I'm going to do the opposite, and I'm going to divide by 9 on both sides. And this is using the division property of equality. The 9's cancel out, and x equals 36 divided by 9, which is 4. And we're done. Let's try another one. Do this with me also in your notes. Go ahead and copy this down and label it as example 2. Okay, now I need to distribute the negative 5. This is my first step. So I'm multiplying by negative 5. Negative 5 times 6n gives me negative 30n. Negative 5 times 6 gives me negative 30. And then I bring down equals 30. Okay, so step 1, I distributed by multiplying times negative 5. Alright, my next step, I need to solve for n. First, I'm going to undo the addition or subtraction. I see minus 30, so I'm going to do the opposite of that, the inverse operation, and I'm going to add 30 on both sides. Okay, now I'm ready to bring down negative 30n. Minus 30 plus 30 is 0, so those cross out, cancel out. bring down my equal sign. There we go. Cross out, bring down my equal sign, and then 30 plus 30 is 60. Okay? At this point, I just have a one-step equation, and I have to undo the multiplication or division. So this is negative 30 times n equals 60. I do the opposite, and I divide by negative 30. Divide by negative 30 on both sides. The negative 30s cancel out, and I have n left over by itself. And then positive 60 divided by negative 30 gives me negative 2. And I know when the signs are different and I'm multiplying or dividing, my answer is negative. So n equals negative 2. Let's try one more. This time I want you to try this one on your own. Copy down the example, hit pause, and try and work it out on your own. When you're ready to check your answer, hit play, and I'll work it out with you. Alright, first we need to multiply 4 by both terms inside the parentheses. This is using the distributive property. So 4 times negative x. I know there's kind of an imaginary 1 there, since I don't see a number in front of the x. That's really negative 1x. So 4 times negative 1x would be negative 4x. 4 times 4 is 16. That would be fantastic if my pen would write. Try this again. Oh, goodness. There we go. 16. Bring down the equals 12. Now we just have a two-step equation. So my next step is to undo the addition or subtraction. I see plus 16, so the opposite of that is minus 16. Okay, bring down the negative 4x. 16 minus 16 is 0, so this cancel out, equals. And then 12 minus 16, I'm going to come over here and do a t-chart. 12 is positive, 16 is negative. Bring over the 12 and subtract. That gives me 4. Since it's in the negative column, that's negative 4. And then my last step, since I have negative 4x equals negative 4, that's multiplication. So the opposite of that, I'm going to divide by negative 4. Divide by negative 4. Over here, my negative 4's cancel out, because that equals 1. And then negative 4 divided by negative 4 equals 1. And I'm done. Okay, what happens when we just have a negative outside the parentheses? What would I do? I would distribute it just like if it were a number, okay? Work this example with me in your notes. I'm going to take the negative and distribute it. Basically, that's just going to switch the sign of each term inside the parentheses. So that n is now going to be negative n, and that minus 8 is now going to be plus 8. Okay? Just like when we were subtracting algebraic expressions in our last unit and we distributed the negative, same thing here. We're just switching the sign of each of the terms inside the parentheses. Okay, and now I'm ready to keep going. First, I have to undo the addition or subtraction. So I see plus 8. I'm going to do the opposite, and I'm going to subtract 8 on both sides. Bring down negative n, and don't forget about that negative, so we're going to have to deal with that in a second. 8 minus 8 is 0, so those cancel out. And then negative 2 minus 8. Negative 2 goes in the negative column. 8 goes in the negative column. Since they're in the same column, we add and keep the sign. So that's going to be negative 10. All right, negative n equals negative 10. That's still not solved because I want n by itself. I don't want a negative with it. To get rid of the negative, what I'm going to do is divide by negative 1 on both sides. Why would I divide by negative 1? Because what is a negative divided by a negative? It's a positive. So when I divide by negative 1, that just leaves positive n left over. And then what is negative 10 divided by negative 1? It is positive 10. That's my final answer. Again, so if you ever have a situation like we do here, where we get to the end and we have a negative variable, you just divide it by negative 1, and that cancels out the negative. practice. If you would like extra practice, go ahead and copy these down and hit pause. You can check your answers. If you feel like you're ready to move on to the digits, then go ahead and pull up digits 8.4 and you can start working. Okay, if you're going to work these optional extra practice problems, press pause, and then I'll get started here working them out for you. Alright, I'm going to start by distributing the -2. So I multiply by -2, that gives me -2x. And then -2 times 5 is going to give me -10 equals 4. From there, 2 steps, I'm going to start by undoing the addition or subtraction. So I'm going to add 10 on both sides. Okay, I bring down my -2x. -10 plus 10 cancels out. And then 4 plus 10 gives me 14. Step 2, I'm going to divide by -2 on both sides. And I get x equals -7. Okay, the next one, I'm going to distribute the 8. So 8 times x is 8x. 8 times 4 is 32. And that stays the same, 16. Then I need to undo the addition or subtraction. Since I see -32, I'm going to add 32 on both sides. Okay, bring down the 8x. -32 plus 32 cancels out. And then we're going to add and get 48. Last step, divide by 8. And those cancel. X equals 6. Alright, if you still have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and ask Ms. Hall or Ms. Timms. Also, please raise your hand now that you're done with the video, and I will come and check to see your notes. You'll get a free 100 for having done the notes and the examples in the video.